Hi everyone and welcome to our Tipsy Paint Holiday Special. Today we're going to be featuring this beautiful whimsical Christmas tree. You're actually able to head over to tipsypaint.com and order your bundle if you haven't done that already. In your bundle for only $30 is included a 16 by 20 canvas, all the paints that you need to create this beautiful painting, along with 3 paint brushes, rinsing paint palette, rinsing cup, and a disposable apron. So let's get started. I already took the liberty of grabbing a writing utensil, whether you have a pen, a marker, or pencil around, and all I did to kind of get us started was put in the shape of our Christmas tree, which is a very large triangle, and you can see the right side of the Christmas tree kind of shoots off the edge of the canvas. Next up, let's grab our big brush. Hopefully you got a chance to put all your paints on your paint palette. So in your bundle will be included white, red, yellow, dark green, light green, blue, and orange. So grab that large brush and we're going to actually start off by using some blue. So grab a generous amount of blue. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to mix all these beautiful colors you see in the background straight onto the canvas. It's called a wet on wet blending technique. So we're going to use the flat side of the brush, pull through with long continuous strokes. We're going to pull that down to the tip of the Christmas tree. And then we're going to drag that down about 3 inches along the left side of the tree and on the right side of the tree. So I know you have your pencil markings. They are just guidelines. So if you slightly hover over it just a little bit, that is perfectly fine. And we're going to work section by section because acrylic paint does dry relatively quickly. We want to make sure that paint stays nice and wet before we start applying our next color. And the next color we're going to put on top of that is going to be a little bit of red. So I'm going to get that beautiful dark purple popping through in the background. So you don't have to clean off your brush. Grab a little bit of red and kind of work that in right on top of the blue. Flat side of the brush, pulling and dragging, covering up any whites of the canvas that you see. Now we've got a really deep dark purple, and I want to lighten it up just a little bit. You're going to do that with a little touch of white. So once you get that red in, blend it in with the blue, you see that deep dark purple peeking through. Make sure you get all those little whites of the canvas kind of peeking through, covered up. Don't have to rinse off your brush. Go in, grab a generous scoop of white, and start working that in. When you start working that in, look at that beautiful tint of purple just kind of peeking through. And that's basically how we're going to be approaching the entire background. All right, the more white you use, the lighter it's going to be. The more blue and red you use, the more darker purple is going to kind of start peering through. So as you're moving along down the canvas, try not to go back up once you're finished with one section. You want to allow that section to dry and we don't want to overwork it. And I'm going to start that process back up again. So you could leave your brush dirty. If you feel like you've got too much white on there, you can always wipe it on a paper towel. I'm going to start back up with some blue. I'm going to make sure I overlap a little bit where I left off. Take that right up against that tree, that line on the left side, our guideline. You're going to pull down about 3 to 4 inches with the blue. You're going to do the same on the right, anywhere from 2 to 3 inches. You want to make sure that blue kind of runs into the purple so we have that nice, beautiful blend. Now, I'm going to pick up a little more red. Don't have to clean off your brush. Overlay the red on top of the blue and work that in. Get that beautiful deep dark purple. Now you can keep it as dark as you want it, as light as you want it. And you can also change the color of your background as well. I do like that light purple contrast against all of those beautiful greens that we're going to work with a little bit later. Grab a little white, work that in. And as you're moving that paint from left to right, I also want you to shuffle that paint downward as well. So you can see have a very smooth background. You want to kind of avoid having any large clumps of paint sitting on your canvas. Kind of helps with the drying process as well. And you can see whatever paint I have left on my brush, I am pulling that down to the bottom of my canvas on that left-hand side. So I have plenty of paint. You can see there's pops of blue that kind of peek through, pops of red. Gentle pressure, don't need to push very hard. And now I'm going to grab a little red and do the same thing on the right side of the tree, pulling and dragging that paint downward, working that red into that blue to get that nice deep dark purple. And when I see that dark purple, I'm going to grab some more white paint and work that in to start lightening it up. And as you're moving from left to right, once again, shuffle that paint downward. So you can see I didn't pick up any extra paint. I was able to pull all that paint off the canvas all the way down to that bottom right-hand corner. A little more white, lighten it up. Once again, see that beautiful transition from darker purples to some blues, to some magentas kind of peeking through. That's what we're going for. I don't want a completely matte background. Definitely want a little bit of that texture. All right, so it looks like I have a little pocket left here. So I'm going to grab a little touch of blue, finish that off, bring that down. Have a little bit of red. And a little touch of white. You're basically just repeating that process over and over again, blending these beautiful colors straight onto the canvas. And what I love about this technique is everyone's canvas is going to look a little different depending on how much blue you used, how much red you used, how much white you used. Look at those textures just kind of peeking through. It's all done with your brush. All right. So once again, double check, make sure the whites of the canvas are covered. You are more than welcome to wrap that paint around the sides of your canvas if you'd like to paint your edges. Looks sophisticated, polished, and it'll be ready to hang. All right. And I am happy with that. So you can give yourself, 5 minutes to let this dry. So you could definitely pause the video, but I'm going to keep on going. So what you're going to do is clean off your brush, give it a really good dry on your paper towel. All right, and we're still using the same large brush. And this time we're just going to fill in the entire Christmas tree in a really, really kind of dark green. So we're going to be using two colors. We're going to be using our darker green and some blue. And we're going to mix those two colors straight onto the canvas, just kind of like we did with the background. So start off with a large scoop of green. Use the flat side of your brush. Kind of bring those edges back in with the skinny side of your brush so we can find that shape of our tree. All right, pull that paint downward. All right, and it looks like I'm about halfway down the tree. So what I'm going to do is, while this paint is still nice and wet, I'm going to grab some of that blue and work that in. That dark blue right on top of that green. You can see we've got a little bit of a teal undertone. Go back in, grab more green paint, work that in. We're going to do that all the way down to the bottom of the tree. And then we're going to give our canvas a really good dry. So we'll be taking a short break after this. Put the green in, put the blue on top, pull that through. Spread out any large clumps of paint. Cover up any speckles of the canvas that you're seeing. And once again, we're just using the dark green and the blue. Moving that out. Now you'll see brush marks throughout the painting, and this is just the foundation, it's a base coat. We will be going over this tree with some really fun spearmint greens and some mint greens. So this is just a good base coat. That's all we need for now. And once again, section by section, you see I started at the top of the canvas, worked my way towards the center, and now I'm at the bottom. Try not to overwork the paint too much. I want to make sure that paint starts drying. And if you see any large clumps of paint like I do, I'm just going to kind of gently smooth those over, push that paint downward, all the way to the bottom. Get that white of the canvas that I see still kind of peeking through. I want to like clean up my edge just a touch. Make sure your Christmas tree is not too high up. You want to make sure we have enough room for that bright shining star. All right, a little touch of green. All right, and that is looking good. All right, so now that we've got our base coat in, give your brush a really good clean, and now I would say give your canvas about a good 10-minute dry time, and we'll start back up. So it's a good time to fill up your hot cocoa or a glass of wine, and I will see you in just a little bit. All right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you got a chance to take a good solid 10-minute break. It looks like my entire canvas is dry. We're actually ready to move on to the next step. So what you're going to do is set that large brush aside, hopefully cleaned off. And in your bundle, you'll have a medium-sized brush and a small brush as well. So what I'd like you to do is grab your medium-sized brush. Now you also have an extra plate in your bundle for mixing. All right, and so you're going to grab that right now. And for the next step, what you're going to do is we're going to grab two colors, and we're going to mix up a lighter green. You can see there's a light green and a dark green on your paint palette. I want you to choose the lighter green. I'm going to take about, let's see here, 2 scoops of the lighter green. And I'm going to grab 1 large, generous scoop of the yellow, and I'm going to mix that in. All right. I'm going to grab a little bit more. I want it to be kind of like a spearmint green. We've got our green, our yellow, and just maybe add a little touch of white to it, just to brighten it up. We want to get that contrast right over the dark green. Ah, there we go. All right, so this is what your green should look like. Some type of spearmint green. So I did 2 scoops of the lighter green, 2 scoops of yellow, and 1 scoop of white. All right, so once you have that all mixed up, maybe scoop off some of that extra paint off your brush on the side of your paint palette. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go in with the side of the brush, and we're laying in vertical lines that have a slight angle to them. All right, we're doing that all throughout the tree, so you can see some of these strokes are a little bit longer, some are a little shorter, some are overlapping each other. I'm going to actually take the canvas off, bring it a little closer to you so you can kind of see what we're aiming for. All right, and you're going to do that throughout the entire tree. You'll have to go back in, grab a little more paint. Now, if you want a little variation throughout your tree, you want to add a couple of different shades of green. What you can do is take a small scoop of that pre-mixed spearmint green, and you can lighten it up even more by adding a touch of white and a touch of yellow to it. All right, so it's just a shade lighter. And what we're going to do is kind of go in and maybe overlap in between some of that spearmint green with this brighter green. You kind of bounce around between those 2 colors all throughout the tree. Now you'll notice that these strokes of color, bright green, tend to get a little bit longer in length as you start moving down the tree. So they're going to get a little bit longer. and a little bit wider. The base of the tree is a little closer to us. All right. Off the tree. Just kind of pull and drag and come off that canvas. You can see my paintbrush is slightly angled, so I'm only using the side of the brush. You can also wipe off your brush and just use the green that came in your art bundle as well. So just working in lots of layers on top of each other, around each other. You don't want to cover up all that dark green in the background. You still want that kind of peeking through. Really just gives that lighter green a nice bright pop, having that contrast in the background. Pulling, dragging, coming off the canvas, bouncing around from the green in your paint palette, the lighter green, the spearmint green that we mixed up with the green, yellow, and white. And we've got that much lighter green where we just added a little more white and a little more yellow to it. Now I do recommend, since we're kind of bouncing around from color to color, give your brush a really good clean, dry it off, and start back up again. All the way down. So now I'm getting a little bit longer with my strokes. I'm pushing just a tad bit harder so these strokes become a little lighter. Pulling and dragging and coming off the canvas. Not using too much paint. You can actually kind of hear my brush scraping the canvas. Got a couple clumps here, so I'm going to try to kind of smooth those out a little bit. You can even go a little bit lighter if you wanted to as well. With a couple of those highlights. Maybe right up against the top of the tree. Along the outer edges. Oh, beautiful. Now, if you feel like the green is too bright, you can always use a little bit of a darker green if you needed to cover up a few spots. All the way down. Make sure you bring those pops of green right up along the edge of the tree as well. You don't want to see that line that we created, so eventually you want to kind of fan that out a little bit. Lighter green. Follow the shape of your tree. Some of your lines will be vertical towards the center of the tree. You can see it starts to kind of fan out towards the outer edges of the tree. Try to smooth out any large clumps of paint, kind of helps with that drying process, especially when we're going to be placing some ornaments on top. Ooh, I like how bright this turned out. That's a little brighter than the original. And that's what I wanted to go for because I had a little bit of a darker background. And any shade of gray will work against this dark blue tree. Make sure you get that all the way down to the bottom. Get the edges, get the corners. All right. And I think I am happy with where I'm at. I always kind of recommend stepping back a little bit. Go look at your tree and see if you missed some areas. I feel like I can do a little highlighting over here to the right. Very nice. And once again, if you feel like you got a little too bright, you can always grab a little bit of your lighter green or darker green and kind of go over some areas just to kind of break apart some of those highlights. Make sure you clean your brush. Oh, I do like how that looks. There really is no right or wrong way of going about it. Just as long as you have different variations of greens layered on top of your tree. All right. So when you're all done, clean off your brush, and we're definitely going to take another drying break. Give yourself about 10 minutes to let your tree completely dry. And like I said, try to kind of smooth over those clumps of paint, helps with the drying process. And I will see you shortly, painters. All right, welcome back, painters. Looks like we have a very dry Christmas tree. So we're ready to move on to the next step. So if you take a look in your bundle, we're going to pick up our smallest brush, and we're strictly just using white paint. And we're going to focus on kind of creating the swirls. Now, I do recommend just using a small amount of paint for now. We're going to get these kind of swirls in, and then we'll go back in with more white and a little bit of that green to kind of give it that teal feel. So pick up that small brush, grab a little bit of white paint. I'm going to start on the left-hand corner here, and you'll see we've got a swirl that kind of comes out in 3 different directions. So follow through in one continuous stroke. Don't have to push very hard, but just kind of lay in a really good foundation of where we want our swirls to be. Eventually, we'll be able to kind of go in and play around with the width of the swirls, which will be a little bit wider towards the face. And then as we pull out, you can see it gets a little bit thinner. So I've got a little cluster here in the top left-hand corner. Now, you can also play around with the movement of your swirls as well. You don't necessarily have to follow the pattern that we have featured here. I'm going to add just a little more curve, that bottom cluster of swirls. It looks like off of this one large swirl, we have a couple of smaller ones kind of veering off. So once again, we're just using white paint, our small brush, kind of going in, creating these swirls, making sure they're moving in all different directions. Some are connected, some are just sitting lonesome. Now it looks like we've got a really large one coming off of one swirl and into the middle of the tree. So make sure you're just following through in one continuous stroke. We will be able to go back in over this. I find that just one fluid motion, you can really achieve the most perfect swirl. It looks like I don't have very much going on over here, so I'm going to put another one in. All right, looks like we've got one kind of coming off the edge over here, overlapping into the tree. Look at that. Make sure you play around with the variation of sizes in your swirl. Make sure you have some smaller ones, larger ones. Again, have them moving in different directions. Looks like I could probably put one little guy up here, but I'm not quite sure I want to do that. I want to make sure I have enough room for my star, so I don't want it too congested. I definitely like what I'm seeing. All right. So it's always good to just kind of step back from your painting, take a look at it and see if you need to add any extra swirls. It looks like, you know, if you wanted to, you can put an extra one at the bottom, one at the top. I would avoid this area right here. That's where we're going to put in our star. So for the next step, what I'm going to do is just start going in and making these just a little bit more opaque by adding just a touch of white. And I'm going to work section by section because I want to make sure this white paint stays wet, because we're going to introduce a little bit of that darker green in there. And the reason why we need that paint to be wet is because that dark green needs to blend with that white to get that beautiful teal looking color. I'm going to touch up those edges, work on that swirl. Now, while that paint is still nice and wet, you could leave the white on your paintbrush. Just pick a little bit of that darker green and just go right on over that white. Work that green into that white and look at that gorgeous minty green we just created. Now, you do have the option of doing different colors as well. So if you wanted to do pink swirls, light blue swirls, yellow swirls, always start off with your base coat of white, and then you can slowly introduce another color into it. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly blended. You could see some of the white is peeking through. Some areas will have more of the green in there, and that's what we're going for. Gentle pressure, follow through in one continuous stroke. And that is the easiest way of approaching this part of the process. Now, when you move on to the next section, clean off your brush, give it a good dry, and you're starting back up with white again. Going back in, making my swirls a little brighter and a little bit whiter, just with the white paint. Following through in one continuous stroke. Section by section. I'm going to hook that in a little bit more. There we go. Smooth out any large clumps of paint. And don't be so tight with your wrist. Just kind of be a little loose about it. You're pulling, dragging, curling. And once you're done with the white, grab a little bit of that darker green and start working that in over the white to get that beautiful minty green. Pulling and dragging that green right on top of that white. Beautiful blends. And like I said, you can definitely play around with your color choices. I'm just kind of sticking with the original. But red would have looked great, even a beautiful kind of scaling ribbon of yellow would look gorgeous as well. Something bright, nothing too dark. Why we always start off with that white first. All right. Clean off your brush, start back up with white. I got my last little batch of swirls. Right in the corner. Wider at the base of the swirl. Just want to make sure you get a good, nice thin hook. And grab a little touch of that green. Oh, there we go. A little bit of green on the background, and that is okay. There we go. This is the spot right here. So take your time. You can always pause the video, get caught up. I know we all work at a different pace. I am happy with these colors. Not too thick, just the right amount of green, mixing with that white to get that gorgeous minty green. So when you're done, clean off your brush because we're going to continue using the same brush for our star. Now this time, if you have your mixing palette available, what I need you to do is we're going to mix up a little bit of white with some yellow. And the reason why we're doing that, the white will make the yellow a little more opaque, and it's going to make our star look very bright on the top of our tree. Now, I always like creating the shape of the star. And there's so many different ways of going about this. But I like to start off with the outline first and then fill it in. And it looks like it's hovering just right above the tree. And then we're just going to add a couple of little lines to give it that shine all the way around it. Just make sure that yellow is mixed with the white. It gives it that bright opaque color and it shows up great against that dark background. Now, if you feel like, oh, I'm still seeing some of that purple showing through, you can always let your star dry and give it a second coat. So I'm going to let you get caught up with your swirls and your star, clean off your brush, and then we're going to get ready to paint some ornaments. So I will see you in a second. All right, well, great job everyone so far. We are getting close to our final touches on this painting. We've got gorgeous dark purple background, beautiful emerald green tree with some teal swirls and our star. So what we're going to be doing is using our small brush pretty much the entire time. And the next step is, you'll see throughout the painting, there's little dashes representing garland all throughout the tree. And once again, you can change your color palette as well. It looks like in the original, we're going to strictly use white paint. We're going to be using our small brush. And all around the garland, in small little dashes, you're going in with just little marks all around the tree. Just kind of rounding it out. You can see I'm kind of moving in a swooping direction, pulling and dragging off the canvas to one end of the tree to the other. Starting back up in the same end point with my second garland. Now you can do layers, you can do multiple colors. Just remember to kind of hop over your swirls. You don't want to go over them. And you can have your garland as large as you want it, as thick as you want it. But I do like the little delicate touch of the white. So start at the top of the tree, move down in a swooping motion, and then when you start the second part of the garland, you start at the end point, start back up, pull down. It looks like we've got a zigzag of dash marks all the way down. You can always let these dry and give it a second coat if you'd like. Now is the time for you to start playing around with your ornaments. You see we have all different kinds of colors. We have purples and yellows and oranges and pinks and reds and blues and light blues. And primarily most of these ornaments are just a circle shape. And you can see they're various sizes. There's some smaller ones, there's some larger ones. You'll see a lot of the smaller ones a little closer to the tree, and then as we come down, the ornaments are just going to get a little bit larger in size since that tree is closer. Now, since we're working on top of a dark background, I do recommend maybe mixing up white with a little bit of your color. So if you're going to do orange ornaments, I would recommend mixing up white with a little touch of orange. You get some nice bright ornaments. Now you can start with one color and kind of bounce around the tree. You can have them in the middle of the tree, next to the garland, on top of the garland. And just start off with one color initially, bounce around. You can always come back in and add a couple more if you like that orange looking color, which I'm really fond of. Clean off your brush. Maybe I want to do some of that bright yellow. We're going to do yellow mixed with a little bit of white. I'm going to get some brighter ornaments in here. And just use the very tip of your brush, swirl it out in a circular motion. And I find that's the easiest way of making a nice round circle. Go in between your swirls. And you can play around with the shapes of your ornaments as well. I'm just going to kind of go through this entire painting with the simple circular shape, but you could do some fun flowers, some stars, anything that you want. This is a fun part of the painting where you get to make it your own, and it looks a little different from the original. So play around with your colors. Let's see, I'm going to do maybe some pink ornaments. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white and red and some pink. Small little swirls. Make sure you get some of those bulbs on the outer edge of your tree as well. Make sure they get a little bit larger in size towards the bottom of the canvas. You want to make sure we keep those smaller ones at the top. Very cute. Maybe I'll clean my brush and we'll do some light blue. Mix up blue, a little bit of white. And play around with mixing colors as well. That's the exciting part of these painting classes. Mixing, blending, seeing what colors you can get. Oh, I'm liking this light blue. That's really cute. Play around with your shapes. Play around with your ornaments. You're at home, relaxing. Don't have to rush to this painting. Take your time. You can always let it dry, and you can always get back to it. Don't have to finish this off in one day. Oh, I love the blue. Now, since I have that light blue, I might take a little bit of red. Put that in right on top of the light blue with a little more white. Some beautiful purple bulbs. And on the other edge. Oh, my tree's starting to fill up. So bright and colorful. I love it. Layers and layers of beautiful colors. So bright and so vibrant. And you can put colors inside of your bulbs. Do a little bit of layering. Let's see here. Maybe I'll do, let's see what happens if I do mix up a little bit of red, a little bit of orange, a little touch of white. Oh, a nice like salmon looking color. You can also get some of those spearmint green bulbs in there, mix a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white. Get a couple of those bright green ones in there as well. You can also do just whites. Want some white bulbs here. The color combinations are endless. Make it your own, have fun with the shapes, decorate it however you want. And this will be a beautiful decorative piece, either for your kids' room or you got a fireplace. Just adds a little color to the festivities. So yeah, that basically completes the teaching aspect. So have fun with it. Play around with your color choices, play around with your shapes, make it your own. Yeah, and like I said, there's no right or wrong way of going about this. So thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate all your support during this time. So have a wonderful holiday season. Please be safe. We'll be here for you. We have a ton of creative bundles for you to choose from. So once again, you can go to tipsypaint.com to our shop page to view all of those beautiful items. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas.